Hi, I'm Margie with Flow Motion Education, and this is part 4 of my multi-part series on optimal pronation mechanics, or how to receive your mass. It's a progression. So here we are in the progression, and I'm going to introduce wedges, anatomy in motion wedges. If you don't have wedges, I recommend that you get wedges, but if you don't get wedges, I recommend a folded up washcloth. They don't have to be super thick. It's really the, not the high part of the wedge that we're putting under the foot, but the low part of the wedge. So, wedges are used to both encourage foot motion or fill space where maybe your optimal tripod isn't meeting the ground. So in this case, we're going to be using the wedges to encourage motion. And I want to remind you that in pronation, one of the components of pronation is that the arch lowers. So we're going to start with our wedge, figuring out how to use wedges by using the heel bone. And I'm just going to tell you, this is pretty subtle. You may or may not feel it. If you don't be discouraged, just keep trying. I think the more you can picture what the bones are doing, the better you'll be able to actually feel what's happening. So this is the heel bone or calcaneus, and notice it's slightly slanted up right now when the foot is just in what's called neutral, so it's neither pronated nor supinated. And for the arch to lower going into pronation, watch what happens specifically to the calcaneus or heel bone. So can you see it's very small, but it sort of tips from this orientation to this orientation, okay? Like, do you see how that bone, this bone is tipping? The front of it is tipping down toward my yoga block, or if you were standing on the ground or floor, it would be tipping, and that is part of pronation. However, for many people, that's not an easily accessible movement. So we're going to introduce wedges, but it is part of pronation, so we need it. So we're going to introduce wedges. And if I put a wedge under the heel and then move the mass over the foot in a forward direction, it's almost as if this is a ball that's going to roll downhill. So it's going to encourage the tipping of the calcaneus. So now we're going to experience that in our bodies. Okay, so welcome to using wedges on your own body. So we're going to start with the wedge under the heel bone. And this is one you might be able to see something in the mirror. It's pretty darn subtle, but my hope on this one is that you will feel something. So first of all, we're going to slide the wedge in under the heel, slanting down toward the forefoot. So it's going to come in from behind the foot, under the heel, just like I showed you on the foot skeleton. Okay, so now we get the question, how far in do we slide this wedge? So remember, I am using the wedge to influence bone motion within the foot, specifically the calcaneus or heel bone. If I put the wedge in too far, this is really like a Goldilocks problem. If I put it in too far, it's actually blocking motion. It doesn't encourage motion. And if I don't put it in far enough, well, it's not really doing anything. So everyone is going to have a sweet spot, and I just encourage you to play with it, where when you get it in just the right amount, Goldilocks, it's neither blocking motion, but it is influencing your foot. So it's in far enough to influence the foot, but not so far that it blocks motion. And what I want you to try and feel, let's just do a few with the wedge under the foot, and then I'll tell you what I want you to feel. And if you don't feel it, I suggest push the wedge in a little further or pull it out a little bit, just kind of play with it and see if you can discover this feeling that we're going for. So the feeling is, as I bring my mass forward, everything else is the same as part 1, 2, 3. And so Please make sure you're bomber solid on those before trying part 4. As I bring my mass forward, I feel it sort of on the back of the heel, and as I continue to travel my mass forward, I feel my mass shift to most of the weight, or more of the weight, on the front of the heel. It's very subtle, but I definitely feel it. Okay, I need my wedge in just a little more than it was. So again, as I start to bring my mass forward, I feel the back of the heel as I continue to come forward to where I'm on the tripod. I feel a sense that I've shifted my weight to the front of the heel. It's pretty subtle, but keep trying. And don't be discouraged if you don't get this right away. This is not the most essential component for you to feel. So once again, as I bring my mass forward, I feel the back of the heel, continue to bring my mass so far forward that it has distributed to the forefoot as well, and now I feel the front of my heel. And I also am really getting a sense of my heel bone tipping.